Hello everyone, this is a presentation about Samagra. As an entity, we were established towards the end of 2012, roughly around 9 years back. The core thesis at Samagra is better governance as a lever to create large-scale impact. We fundamentally believe that if we want to touch millions and millions of people and transform their lives, one cannot wish away the political and the governance process. Hence, since our inception, all the work that we've done has been quote unquote with the system. For the first 2.5 years of our existence, we actually used to work with members of parliament and more broadly elected representatives and support them with different aspects of constituency development. How do you bring more development in a region from where an MP is getting elected from? We had an opportunity to work with MPs across party lines in at least 8 different states. And it was a lot of learning over those 2.5 years. We really saw the impact of our work up and close. We really understood in a lot of depth around how district administrations function. We understood the interplay between administration and politics and a lot of other things. But then also basis the same set of learnings and a few observations we had in those 2.5 years, we pivoted as an organization. And now for the last more than 6 years, we've been focused on working with the political and the bureaucratic leadership, primarily in the states and sometimes in the government of India, on deep systemic reforms across different domains of governance, such as school education, skilling, employment linkages, agriculture, service delivery, and so on. Overall, we are roughly a 50-member entity right now. And at any given point in time, we are working on 8 to 9 different transformation programs, transformation agendas across 6 to 7 different domains in 4 to 5 states and some work with Government of India. So with this quick context, let me start off this presentation. And the idea is to give an overview of who we are as an entity. So I'm going to talk about 4 different things here. I'm going to give a little bit, a few examples and talk about the kind of work that we're doing, the programs that we do. Then second, I'll get into the organizational aspect of things because it's important for us to build a high quality organization, high quality institution. Then the third thing I'm going to talk about is Samagra X. Samagra X is the umbrella under which we do all our GovTech and data gov work, and that's becoming more and more core and more central to our transformation. So I'm going to talk about that. In the last, spend maybe a minute or two on an important milestone for us next year when we'll turn 10. So December of 2022 will be 10 years old. So I'll briefly touch upon that as well. So starting off with the first section, which is around programs at Samagra, the kind of work that we do. And let me start off by giving some examples of the kind of work we have involved with. So this is an example from Uttar Pradesh. The program is called Mission Prerna. So UP became actually the first state in the country, even before the new or the national education policy came about last year. It became the first state to say that we want to get all our primary school students to be proficient in foundational literacy and numeracy. That means they should be able to do basic arithmetic and they should be able to read with fluency. So that's the goal that Uttar Pradesh set for itself before the national education policy. In anticipation of it, of course, now FLN, or Foundation Literacy and Numeracy, is a key cornerstone of the NEP. But this happened before that. The pic that you see here is from the launch of Mission Prerna, when the state leadership took an oath to say that we want to get all primary school government students to be proficient in FLN. It's a large school ecosystem. There are 110,000 primary schools. There are more than 1.2 crore students studying in these schools. And of course, since then, COVID happened, the national education policy came out. And now, under the brand of Nipun Bharat, a lot of states basically are adopting the same goal or setting the same mission for itself. Now, if you look at, and I just want to pick this program to give you a sense of the kind of framework we work with on some of these programs, and Mission Prerna could be a good example for that. Let me run you through broadly the framework of it. So at the top, there's a goal. There's a very specified goal in all our programs to say this is what we're trying to achieve. In this particular case, we are looking for a certain specific competencies among school-going students in Hindi and math. So it as sharply defines the goal, Mission Prerna, as saying that a grade 3 student should be able to do subtraction and should be able to read 20 words per minute. Right? So that's the kind of specificity to which the goal is usually defined. Sometimes it's this specific, sometimes it can be a little broad as well. But the first thing is goal setting on our program, and that is done jointly with the leadership of the states. Then there has to be a mechanism through which this goal actually gets measured. That's very important because how will we know that we are kind of getting there or we're kind of getting the success? In this particular case, in case of Mission Prerna, it's through a concept of Prerna Ghoshna. When the state, where we've taken block as a unit of change, there are some 900 education blocks across the state of UP. And whenever a block feels that they've achieved the goal, they've achieved the Prerna Lakshya, then they can actually self-nominate themselves. And once they nominate, a third party would come and do an assessment, sample assessment of students in that block. And if it's actually found that that's been achieved, then the block is declared as a Prerna block. Right? So that's the concept. That's the third party independent measurement of attainment of goal basis a nomination basis in this case. And in the middle, there are a whole series of administrative initiatives, academic initiatives, and some enabling initiatives, which will help the state, help the schools to get towards that goal. So that's a typical construct of any program at Samagr, which we are doing in partnership with the state government. There's a clearly defined goal where the leadership of the state is completely committed to, and it's percolated right down to the last level in the system. There's a way in which that goal is getting measured, and in between there are a series of technical and administrative levers or initiatives which help attain that. Similarly, giving examples of some other pieces of work that we've been involved with. This is an example from Haryana called Saksham Haryana Skills and Employment, where the idea, we've been working closely with the employment department and the skill development department in the state to get more and more youth of Haryana to be linked to employment opportunity. And as part of this program, again, there are a lot of firsts that have happened. Haryana is today the #1 state in the country when it comes to apprenticeship. It's really taken the lead and shown the path when it comes to apprenticeship. There's been a complete overhaul of the government recruitment process in the state. So this government recruitment and this private recruitment. So government recruitment has been completely overhauled. It's a state where a former chief minister is in jail on account of recruitment scandal. So the kind of mess that was there was huge, and with close working on the policy side, on the implementation side, on the technology side, and so on, this whole recruitment process in the state has been made merit-based and transparent. Another example here is the work that's happened on the private recruitment side, and that's been done. A lot of it has been done in partnership with a lot of aggregators, job aggregators, and other aggregators such as Ola, Zomato, and so on. Of how do you kind of really facilitate the youth of Haryana to get onto these platforms or leverage some of the job portals, private job portals, to get land private jobs for themselves. So that's another piece of work that has happened. And another interesting example from here is the way skilling is getting transformed in the state through a concept of dual system of training, where while a student is kind of taken admission in an ITI or industrial training institute, half of the time the student actually spends in industry getting hands-on training on the job training, and the remaining half of the time is spent doing theory and other practical stuff in the institute. So these are different initiatives within the larger Saksham Haryana Skills and Employment bucket. This is another example of the program of a program that we're doing with the government of Odisha, and this one is on agriculture and horticulture. It's called ADAPT. Again, the broader focus of this program has been to improve farmers' income in the state and increase farm productivity. And as part of that, again, a series of things have happened. Just some highlights there are. One is the state agricultural policy called Samruddhi, which is a one-of-its-kind policy, extremely data-backed with clear targets for the state year on year. That's one thing under the larger ADAPT program. Another example, and I'm just giving example, the framework for all of these programs will be very similar to what I showed for Mission Prerna, but I'm just giving examples of things that have happened which could be relatable. Another key initiative under the program has been Kalia. Kalia is a inclusive income transfer scheme in Odisha. It's been hailed as one of the best designed direct benefit transfer schemes in the country, and was a precursor to PM Kisan and a key flagship program of the state for the last many years now. So that has been part of ADAPT. A very comprehensive database of farmers has been created. Krishak Odisha database of 51 lakh farmers. And this is kind of really required a lot of different databases to talk to each other, a lot of backend data gov activities to kind of come with this database, which becomes the base for our service delivery to the farmers in the state. Another interesting example as part of this is something called Dakshata, which is a performance management system for the frontline agriculture workers in the states. So, whole series of firsts as part of ADAPT. Now, this work is also expanded to Fisheries and Animal Resources Department in the state of Odisha, because that also constitutes an important part of farmers' income beyond crops. This is again an example from Haryana called Digital Haryana. As part of this, we had a small team working from the Chief Minister's office in Haryana with the mandate of coming up, building the core tech and data capabilities in the state that is required to deliver good governance. And one of the key initiatives under Digital Haryana has been something called Antyodaya Saral, through which the state has really transformed the way it delivers schemes and services to the citizens. There are some 550 odd government schemes and services cutting across 36 government departments, and all of them have been brought on one integrated platform. At least they've been front of it has been brought on one platform. And for the citizens, this ease of application through either online means or offline means, all of which have been streamlined. And within a time-bound manner, any scheme or service, a caste certificate, an income certificate, a driving license, a pension, a scholarship, all of these get delivered to the citizen in a seamless manner. It's been a complete overhaul of the way the state government functions when it comes to citizen schemes and services. It's also gotten many accolades, including the President's Awards for the best e-governance initiative across the country last year, and several other things. But that's been a fundamental reform under Digital Haryana in the state of Haryana. This is an example on health. So while we do a lot of work in education, I talked about UP, Uttar Pradesh. We've also been doing education work in Himachal, in Haryana, and so on. The idea was to kind of leverage the same systems change or systemic thinking approach and apply it in the domain of health. And we have done a design piece of how it could happen in health. This was post the pandemic. In fact, during the pandemic, that we undertook this exercise to say, how can we reform health systems in Gujarat and Odisha? And for this is around that piece of work. There's another program that we've been running over time, which is called the Chief Minister's Good Governance Associate in Haryana. As part of this, there's one young professional in each of the 22 districts of the state of Haryana. And there's a small team in the Chief Minister's office which runs this program in collaboration with Ashoka University. So in 2015 is when we really conceptualized this program along with Ashoka University. We kind of built it brick by brick and ran it for 4 full years with the Chief Minister's office in Haryana. And now for the last almost a year, a little more than a year, the program has been handed over completely to the government and to Ashoka University. In addition to these programs, I also want to quickly touch upon some of the COVID response work that we did of late. They are not the typical programs that we do. The typical programs are longer term in nature, more deeper systemic reforms, but still a glimpse of some of the COVID response pieces that we did. This is an example of the work that we did during the first wave of COVID, when we were working with this Empowered Group 5. So Government of India had created groups of secretaries to manage different aspects of the lockdown when the first national lockdown happened. And we were working very closely with Empowered Group 5, which was mandated with ensuring that there is uninterrupted supply of essentials across the country during the lockdown. So that's one piece that we kind of got to contribute towards. This is an example from the second wave of COVID, where oxygen crisis was at its peak, especially in Delhi, when there was huge amount of crisis at the end of April, and that's when we were kind of called upon on an SOS basis to work with the Government of India to ensure that Delhi gets its allocated, at that time, 590 metric ton of oxygen every day. So that's something that we kind of came in immediately and started kind of working on. On the other side, we also worked with the Government of Delhi to help streamline the way oxygen management and more broadly COVID management was happening within the state, and created this integrated command and control center and set up a set of processes which hopefully would come in handy if there is another wave of COVID. So that's some of the COVID response work that we did. But common characteristics, not of the COVID programs, but other than COVID, all the other work that we do with the government, there's some common characteristic of all of these programs. Firstly, there has to be a strong pull from government leadership. this is one of the almost a preconditions for us to get into a situation or get into a partnership with the government. We really want a driven and competent bureaucrat who's driving the program, is wanting to drive that reform agenda and has the mandate from the political leadership, in most cases the chief minister. So mandate at the political level and a competent and driven bureaucrat to drive that particular agenda. That's when we really like to come in and support, because while a lot of things can be done, but it really boils down to what the leadership really wants to do. And that's a common strong characteristic of all of our programs. Now, sometimes it does happen that when we're in the middle of a program, the transfers happen and the bureaucrat changes. And that's where we have to kind of work with the bureaucracy that comes in or the leadership that comes in and collaborate with them. But at the beginning of the program, we make sure that there's a strong pull, and then only we are getting it. The second, as I said, that we users take a systems thinking approach. Right? We treat, for example, working in school education, we treat the entire school education, all the schools, teachers, students, administrators, all of them as a system, and then take a systems approach to take that domain in the state from point A to point B over a period of time. It's not a point intervention approach. We are not looking at a part of the puzzle. We're not saying improve teacher training and then everything will be sorted with that. No, we're taking school education as a system and doing a series of things, maybe a combination of 10, 15, 20 interventions that need to happen together to bring about the change and take school education in the state from point A to point B. And as a result, and because of this, these are usually our work is in the nature of, is in 2 to 3 year transformation waves. You set a goal and it takes those 2 to 3 years to kind of get there, and you set another goal and you set another goal and so on. So that's the way it works. It's systems thinking approach. And as I said, the roadmap is often a combination of administrative initiatives on one side and technical on the other. So just to again take the example of school education, on one side, we are talking about things like what's the right configuration of schools in the state? How do you make sure there's merit-based selection of teachers? How do you have a transparent teacher transfer policy in the state? How do you build in accountability for learning outcomes? All of these are administrative or management levers in some sense. On the other side, we'll talk about things like what's the right pedagogy? What's the right teaching learning material? How should assessments happen in the state? How should the academic calendar be organized? And so on and so forth, which are all technical. How should teacher training happen? All these are technical levers. So it's always a combination of administrative and technical levers that lead to a change, that leads to a system transformation. Again, data is very important to us. Everything that's happening, try and monitor as much of that as possible through data, through as real-time a data as possible, as authentic a data as possible, and then close the loop with that. So both for inputs, the outputs, and ultimately the outcomes. So extremely data-backed approach that gets taken. And we are always a small team, right? Any of these pieces of work that I've talked about and many more, our team is usually a 4-member, 5-member, 6-member team. It's a small team which is playing the role of a catalyst. The idea is not to augment government bandwidth, but the idea is to play a role of a catalyst so that the system can deliver what it's supposed to be delivering. And then over a period of time, once these interventions are kind of embedded, then sustain this change and move out, right? That's the approach. Act as a catalyst in the beginning and then sustain the change in the system. That's very important. So these are some common characteristics of the programs that we do. Let me now come to the second part of the presentation, which is the organization. So we are really on a mission to create a high quality institute, an organization that can stand the test of times and that can continue to deliver impact on an ongoing basis beyond the current set of team that is there in the organization. So organization building is extremely important at Samudra. And over a period of time, and the approach that we take to organization building is we experiment and we do different things. And once we fine tune, keep fine tuning, and once we feel something is working, then we pick it up and codify it in the form of a construct. That's the approach historically in the last many years we've taken at Samudra. And as a result of that, today we have multiple constructs at Samudra. Right? At the top of it is of course our mission. Then associated to achieve that mission are a set of values. Right? So mission of course comes first and values come first. Everything else is something that has evolved over time. Then we have 3 things after that, which is our engagement model. How do we really engage with the government? And we talked about that. This engagement model we briefly touched upon. Then there's the solution approach. What is our problem-solving approach when we are working on governance problem statements? And then how does this approach really manifest itself on a day-to-day basis, which is what we call the Samagra ways. So this engagement model, solution approach, and Samagra ways. Now to know how we are doing, how we are performing, are we doing things in the right way? There is something called quality parameters that we define for ourselves. We almost kind of benchmark and test our programs against these quality parameters. And to enable all of these, there are two things. One is the team processes, the processes that our program teams follow or our engagement teams follow when they're working on different problem statements. And secondly, very, very important for us, professional development framework. So we have a robust professional development framework for our team members to really handhold and support them in their professional journeys and their professional learning. So these are the two enablers to the things. And even more fundamental, even more underlying is the newest construct that we have introduced at Samagra several months back, which is called the Samagra mindset. And what's the mindset that will help do all of this? So it starts with the mission, the corresponding values. Then there is engagement model, solution approach, and the manifestation of that approach, which is Samagra ways. Then a set of quality parameters for us to know how we are doing. And to enable all of this, a set of team processes and a professional development framework, and underlying that, the mindset. I'll go through all of them one by one. The first is the mission. So our mission is to improve the quality of life of citizens through better governance. Right? And two things to note here. One is that we are talking about quality of life. That means it could be any domain. It could be any aspect of quality of life. We are not restricted ourselves to any one domain or sector or dimension. Right? We are broadly talking about quality of life. At the same time, we have fixed our lever of change, which is better governance. We fundamentally believe, as I said, the thesis that some of this better governance is a lever to create large-scale impact. Our level of change is fixed to be governance, while there could be many other potent levers of change, but we have defined governance to be our lever. Our values, these are the 6 values that we have at Samagra. I'm not getting the details of each one of them, but we really believe that in our context, to achieve our mission, this is important that we demonstrate these values in our day-to-day working and in our larger decision making. These are parameters for us to help decide. Some of these are kind of parameters for us that help decide. Then we have our engagement approach, which is the next element. This is something that we touched upon, which is our engagement approach, which we touched upon during the time we were discussing the program. So it's the same thing here. And then our solution approach, engagement model and the solution approach now. There are three elements of our solution approach. So there's an element of top-down management consulting, which really helps us structure our problem statements, right? So the problem structuring is extremely top-down, like it would happen in a management consulting firm. We pick out a problem, we break it down into smaller pieces and prioritize few of those pieces. And that's exactly how we do in Samagra. We don't basically pick from start kind of looking at it from one node of the tree. We look at the entire tree as a whole from the top and break it down into smaller pieces. The second element of the approach is a very bottoms-up understanding of how the governance ecosystem works, and that helps in solution design. This is a key USP in some sense, where all our solutions are grounded in the governance realities. How does a district function? What are the authorities of a district collector? How does a block operate? What are the motivations of a head teacher? How does the capabilities of a block resource person looks like? What do the extension officers, how do they operate? So deep understanding, how do panchayats operate? Deep understanding of how the governance ecosystem of the grassroots look like, and that really helps in solution design. The idea is not to come up with solutions that look logical and look good on PowerPoint, but solutions that are actually implementable at scale. And that's where the second element of the approach becomes important. And the third element of the approach is appropriate use of technology and data to enable implementation of the solutions. Since everything that we're doing is at scale, everything is at least at the scale of the state. Therefore, tech and data becomes a necessity to implement solutions at that scale. But appropriate use of tech and data is important. We don't want to overuse tech. At the same time, we don't want to kind of not use it when it's appropriate. So appropriate use of tech and data is a key enabler of implementation. So top-down management consulting approach for problem structuring, a bottoms-up understanding of the governance ecosystem for solution design, and appropriate use of tech and data to enable implementation. So that's the solution approach at Samagra. The next one is the Samagra ways. How does this approach really manifest itself on a day-to-day basis? And for that basis, what we have been doing and what we have observed in our working, we have codified these 12 Samagra ways. And that really represent how we work or how we operate on a day-to-day basis as a team. Now, putting all of this together is the quality and impact parameters. This really help tell us how we are doing on our program. outcomes, right? And we have 5 of them. Quality of outputs is important to us because we believe it's the outputs that lead to outcomes. Translation of outputs to outcomes is important. We just don't want to be done by having a good design, by having a good product, by having a good implementation plan, but it's important that it's actually accrues into outcomes. Extreme user centricity in our output and outcomes, data backed output and outcomes, and ultimately the ultimate test of impact is visible on ground change. So these are the 5 quality parameters. In fact, every quarter, a team basically visits the field, visits the districts in several of the states that we are working to see that whatever we expected as change on the ground, is it really palpable, is it really visible? Talk to the stakeholders, talk to the beneficiaries, and basically almost assess our own self against these quality parameters. 2 enablers for all of this, as I said, one is team processes. So we have very well-defined team processes in Samarth. They've been fine-tuned over years to suit the requirements of our programs, of our context, and so on. So these are different team processes that are listed. They get all teams kind of work with them. They adhere to this both in spirit and in letter, and it's something that's, as I'm saying, refined and fine-tuned over time. And the other very, very important part is the professional development framework at Samarth. There are multiple ways in which professional development happens. First, one needs to know what is expected of everyone at Samarth. For that, we have a very detailed competency framework that's been defined. It's almost like in education, you have competencies defined for different grades. Similarly, here at Samarth, we have competencies defined for different roles. So that's one. Everyone has clarity on what they're expected of them. Then there's a process of structured one-on-one feedback that happens every fortnight. And there's a way in which these one-on-ones happen, which help identify what somebody is doing well, what could be better, what are some of the action items associated with them, and basis that have a personalized development journey for everyone. So there's a robust process through which hand-holding happens across these. Then we have a lot of formal trainings at Samarth. We have something called a Gurukul, we have something called a bootcamp. There are multiple things that we do for formal training, and from time to time we do leadership coaching of our middle management as well. So there's a lot of focus at Samarth on professional development of team members, and that's a big priority at all times. And last but not the least, the latest one that we've kind of introduced is the Samarth mindset, which is in some sense a certain attitude, a certain mindset that will enable all the other team constructs to be effective. So this is how team constructs look at Samarth. The mission to improve the quality of life of citizens through better governance, a set of values that help attain that mission, our engagement model, which is the 5 bullet points that we saw, solution approach, top-down, bottom-up, and use of tech and data. That's what we looked at. Samagra ways, which are how the manifestation of approach on a day-to-day working, quality parameters, which we hold ourselves accountable against. We look at them once a quarter, we see how we're doing on them, and then team process and professional development and ultimately the mindset. The third thing I want to talk about as part of this presentation is SamagraX. It's the umbrella under which now we house all our GovTech and DataGov. When the journey really began in 2017, we were already doing this systemic transformation work across different states, across different domains. And what we observed was that technology, the speed and quality at which technology gets done in government was becoming a bottleneck to some of these transformations. For example, if you have an education transformation, I'm just taking an example of education as a constituent this thing. There are 15 interventions that's happening as part of that. Now, let's say out of those 15, 10 have or 5 or 7 have a tech component to it. Now, because of the speed and the quality at which technology would happen in the government, the overall outcomes would suffer or slow down. The impact would slow down because these initiatives would become a laggard on account of technology. And that's the time we really felt that we should really solve for this. We should develop certain internal capabilities, certain ways of working on technology on GovTech and DataGov. And that'll be a huge enabler, a huge boost to the work that we're doing with the governments. And also at the time, Digital Haryana started, where we also got a formal mandate from the government of Haryana to really work closely and see the kind of tech and data capabilities the states needs to have in order to be able to discharge its governance functions well. So all of that combined together, it's been a long journey over the last 4 years to really crack this in some way. And but what I'm going to talk about is where we are today. How does SamagraX look like today? Essentially 3 parts to this. One is tech products, second is tech advisory, and third is public digital goods. I'll talk about all of them one by one. Starting off with tech products first. Let me give you some examples of tech products that we've built and then deployed and scaled up deployed inside the government setup and which are now sustainable in the government setup, right? Technology products that we as Samagr have kind of quickly built, put in the government and scaled up there and deployed there, sustained there. Just some examples, and these are all of them are coming from some intervention which is part of a larger systemic transformation program. So there's large program, multiple initiatives. One of those initiatives requires a tech product, and that's how these are coming from. This is an example from Mission Prerna itself, the first example that we saw today, where there is need for assessment of foundational literacy and numeracy. And the challenge there is it has to be oral assessment. Because we're talking about oral reading frequency and so on. That means the voice recognition technology is required, and that's where we partnered. Samagr partnered with Google, and of course the UP government and Samagr partnered with Google to come up with this app called the Prerna Lakshya app, which would kind of use the Google's voice recognition technology of Google Bolo and have a wraparound app on top of it to be able to assess students of how they are doing on foundational literacy and numeracy. This is another example from a very different state, different domain, Odisha in agriculture, where a Krishi Unnat Sahyoghi app got created to collect field data from the farmers around the crop they're growing, their records, grievances, and so on and so forth. This was used by a set of agricultural interns who would kind of spend 4 months in a year on the field, going from one farmland to another. So a very different domain, a very different state. Like this, over the last roughly 18 to 20 months, 18 to 24 months, we've created some 20 plus products across states and domains. Now, how is it possible? We have a very, very small, we have a very lean kind of tech team internally at Samagr, but still we've been able to do this. And let us kind of look at them more closely to understand how, from a technology perspective. So this is the architecture of the Prerna Lakshya app. And this is the architecture of the Agri Associate app or the Krishi Unnat Sahyoghi app. And if you look at them, while they may be very different domains, very different state, but at the back of it, there's hardly any difference. The architecture looks very similar. These gray blocks that you're seeing here is what we call reusable GovTechized FOSS. FOSS is free open source software. So these are essentially nothing but Lego blocks. So if you pick up an open source software that's available out there, GovTechize it, make it relevant in the Indian governance context, right? And I'm not getting into the details of how we do that, but they're not readily usable in the Indian context, in the Indian governance context. So a bunch of code needs to be written, a bunch of features need to be added to make it GovTechize it. And this itself, what gets created is itself an open source block, open source Lego block. And a combination of such open source Lego blocks come together to create these products. So what we have done over the last 4 years is created a whole series of these GovTechized FOSS across 7 different buckets. And this is the different components. These are equivalent. Each one of them is equivalent to the gray box that we saw earlier. So these GovTechized FOSS have been created. And whenever a product needs to be created in the context of governance, some of these, a subset of these blocks, Lego blocks, come together to create that product. And that is how we've been able to create churn out a large number of products in a short period of time, which can be used in the governance context. So that's on the tech product side, the capabilities that we have right now. Coming to tech advisory. Now, it's not that we would want to develop things for the government. We may do it once in a while using these Lego blocks, but it's really a lot of times larger platforms need to be built. Complex systems need to be built. There, it's not, and we're not in any case an engineering company. We don't want to be doing that. So there's a lot of advisory that's required, and we need to work with the government, guide, support the government in taking the right technology decisions. And that's the tech advisory piece. And here we have largely 4 capabilities. Because one capability is the ability to diagnose or almost CT scan any given government tech system. Right. Often there are existing systems in the government. It's a brownfield situation. There are a lot of legacy systems. So you don't want to build things from scratch. The ability to understand what exists, that's one capability that we develop. The second is the ability to architect GovTech platforms. So larger shift in the governance space is a shift towards platforms, and the ability to think through and conceptualize and design these platforms is the second capability. Now, different parts of these platforms, some of them may be readily available components, open source components, some of it may come from these Lego blocks, some of them may need to be developed fresh, but the ability to think through it is the second capability. The third is Sometimes when technology needs to be developed in the government, or sometimes more often than not, they'll get a tech vendor to kind of actually do that. Either NIC, which is the in-house government tech team, or a tech vendor will be gotten on board with that. Now the idea is to really be able to create those specifications, functional specifications or RFPs, which ring fence the design of the technology, and so that whoever is coming to build in actually is almost forced to follow that design and cannot kind of mess with that. And that's the idea, to be able to ring fence design through RFPs. And the fourth, of course, is to build capability within the government engineering team. So these are some of the things that we've developed over time. This is just one example of how the architecture of the data architecture, the tech and data architecture of education in Himachal looks like. Different components that existed from different point in time, they are being brought together to be one coherent system. They might look like a complicated system in many things, but they'll all be talking to each other. So that's an example of tech advisory. This is a platform, this architecture of an employment linkage platform that's being designed in Haryana, which has 3 layers. There's a core, there's an ecosystem layer, there's an application layer on top of it. It's a layered architecture, very much similar to how we have in almost, let's say, UPI. So that's another example. This is the RFP that we created for NCVT, which is the National Skilling Regulator. And the tech system or a tech platform it should have. And obviously a tech vendor would need to be onboarded to build it. So ring fencing the design of it through an RFP. These are some examples. So that's the second bit, which is tech advisory. The third component within Samagra is basically public digital goods, something that we've been working on for the last almost a year now. It's a latest edition. Tech products we've been doing for a while, tech advisory we've been doing for a while. We've kind of matured on those levels, and the new thing that we're working on for the last 1 year is public digital goods. A lot of technology that's required in governance and in the impact sector more broadly is being developed outside of the government as public goods, and then adopted or used by the government for different purposes. So we have been actively contributing to this public digital good center, and also leveraging the same goods, public digital goods, for our programs, for our states, and so on. Just to give a couple of examples there, we've actively been working with the Diksha team on something called Prashnavali, which is a module within Diksha. Diksha is the national platform for education, for teacher training, and etc. So there we're kind of building a module around Prashnavali, where question banks can be created and tagged, and automatic question papers can be generated by the states to conduct examinations. Right? So we needed something like this in one of our states. We said, rather than doing it for the state, let's do it as a public digital good, make it available on Diksha so that all states can benefit from it. So we are closely working with the Diksha team on this. This is another example. Again, came out from our own requirement in our states, where a lot of communication happens within the government, from the state capital right down to the field, and vice versa. Trigger-based communication, notifications, feedback, broadcast, different kind of communication need to happen. Currently, all of it happens offline. Some voice blast will happen, some WhatsApp groups, it will happen through WhatsApp groups and so on. But how do you systematize that? How do you really develop a system through which all of this can happen in a seamless manner, talking to the state database and so on? To solve for this, we wanted to build something. And again, we thought, can we do it as a public digital good? Can we make it a part of Sunbird, which is an existing public digital platform, and have this capability there, so that any state, any domain can actually use that. And it'll also become part of the national Diksha platform for education, but similarly, it can be used by other domains through other platforms. So this is something that we are working closely with the Sunbird team to develop. Unified communications interface. It will allow for all kind of communication within the government across domains. And this is the kind of architecture, this is how the architecture of UCI actually looks like. Yeah, so these are 3 things for which we've developed capabilities: tech products, tech advisories, and public digital goods. But all of this happens in the context of the governance transformation, or systemic transformation work that we're doing with the government. These tech products are required to enable implementation of some of the initiatives as part of our systemic transformation work. Tech advisory is required to develop platforms, to develop products as part of the same work. And public digital goods, sometimes what we need in a state, what we need in this thing, we abstract it out and create a public digital good out of it so that others can also use it seamlessly. And as we have been doing this work, a lot of GovTech constructs have gotten developed. Our knowledge, we've tried to codify our knowledge in the same spirit like we do our internal org processes. We've tried to codify our GovTech knowledge, and many constructs have come out of it. One is the core principles, the 10 principles that we really hold ourselves against when we're doing tech work within government. Then product maturity framework. Given any GovTech product, we can really map out how mature that product is against this framework. There's a product development life cycle, which is contextualized to GovTech products, where part of the work happens outside of the government, part of the work happens inside the government. So that's what we've developed. There are handover levels, especially when things are getting developed outside, but we need to sustain and scale within the government. And what are the different levels of handover there? And also, who develops something? Right? This is a common question. Do we develop using the Lego blocks? Do we get a government? Do we get NIC to develop? Do we get a tech vendor for the government to develop? So all of that. How do you decide on that is something that comes to this product development decision tree that we have created, which really comes in handy in taking those decisions. As far as our team is concerned, our internal full-time team is very, very lean. It's a very small team that we have. It's led by Rahul Kulkarni, who's our chief technologist, and full-time leads this team. It's a small team with 3 product managers, with 4 engineers. It's a small team that powers SamagraX or our GovTech and Data Cover. This is called the X team internally. Also, we work with a lot of partner organizations and freelancers who augment the capacity of this team, because we don't want to have a large engineering or a large tech team internally. We work with a lot of partners. But the important other point that I want to call out here is that over the last few years, there's been a concerted effort to say that all of our consultants, people who are working on programs, our governance consultants, all of them need to understand technology deeply. All of them need to be a little bit of product managers, so to say. And there's been a lot of effort in that direction, a lot of capacity building that has happened, a lot of training that has happened, a lot of exposure that has happened. It's part of the performance appraisal, it's part of the professional development frameworks, all of that. So technology, GovTech being mainstream into our consulting is really the approach. And that's fundamentally different from the way, let's say, at least we've seen it happen in the corporate world, where technology is a function on the side. Here we want to mainstream technology in our governance problem solving itself. Yeah, this is what I was essentially talking about. And we do various things for that. There's a detailed tech competency framework. We rotate our consultants from the X team. We do a lot of trainings. We do a lot of tech work streams where ownership is taken by the consultants and so on. So various ways through which we are embedding technology into the mainstream. And last couple of minutes on Samagre 10, as I said, we are 9 years old, and December of 2022, we are going to be 10 years old as an organization. It's an important milestone in our journey. Where we have gotten so far, as I said, at any given point in time, I said in the beginning, at any given point in time, we're working with 4 to 5 state governments, maybe Government of India. Across 6 to 7 domains, we are working on 8 to 9 programs. We have a 6 to 7 member SamagraX team. We have a total of roughly 50 member team now. And we work with a lot of partners. We work with funding partners. We work with implementation partners. We work over years with around 30-35 partners. Some of our philanthropy, most of the work is funded by philanthropy. So there is, usually the government is the one who approaches that they want to do something. So the first move is made by the government in terms of what they want to achieve. Together we shape that vision, we come up with a goal, we come up with a broad approach. And once there's alignment and once we feel there's a strong pull from the government, then we say, okay, yes, we could work together. And that's when the government leadership usually approaches one of the funding organizations, one of the philanthropy organizations to figure out a way to privately fund a fee. So that's how the 3-way partnership kind of gets into being. These are some of the funding partners who have supported the work for the years. And where we are right now, I think there's been a consistent delivery, track record of delivery and tangible impact across all the programs that we've picked up. There's very strong word of mouth credibility in the ecosystem. There's a committed homegrown middle management. So there's a team of roughly seven members in the middle management, which is all kind of largely homegrown within Samagre. So that is there. The strong value proposition for young talent. I think we believe, at least we like to believe, that we are attracting the best talent in the impact ecosystem today. And financially, we're in a stable organization. We've never had external investors and no plans yet to kind of have that. So that's where we are right now. Of course, what's our goal then for Samagre 10? We really want to be ready It's an important milestone, not just for us. Next year also we'll be completing 75 years of India's independence. And if you just combine the two, the goal that we have set for ourselves in Samagra 10 is to be ready to be able to make a meaningful contribution in the India at 75 to India at 100 journey. Right? When our nation, we really believe that if we want to get our rightful place as a country, want to realize our potential, then it's going to be in this India at 75 to India at 100 period. If we don't do it in that period, then it'll be late, right? So that's the time we really believe that we should realize our potential, and we want to be making our own small contribution in that national effort. And to be able to make our own small contribution in that journey, we want to be ready between now and Samagra 10 to be able to do that. And for that, we've really kind of come up with our own set of priorities. We've created our own framework, broken it down to say these are a set of things we want to do between now and December of next year to be able to be ready for this India at 75 to India at 100 journey. Yeah. So with this, we come to the end of this presentation. I've talked about 4 things. I gave a quick overview at the beginning. Then I gave examples on the programs that we are doing and culled out some of the common characteristics of these programs. Then I deep dived a little bit on the organizational front. It's very important for us to build a high quality organization. And if a lot of time, effort, energy goes into that, I talked about the different constructs that we have internally at Samagra. Then I moved on to Samagra X. It's the umbrella under which we do our GovTech and data gov work, and that's again becoming more and more core to the governance work that we're doing, and hence a special focus on that. And I talked about on the GovTech side what are the capabilities we have around products, around advisory, around public digital goods, and this is only evolving. Data gov is also becoming a big component of this and will kind of evolve in the coming months and years. And finally, I touched upon Samagra 10, important milestone for us, an important milestone for the country. And we want to be ready by then to be able to make a meaningful contribution in the India at 75 to India at 100 journey. Thank you. I hope this was helpful.